Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we'll present an overview of the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos on Daf Daled Amud Aleph, Daf Daled Amud Beis, and Daf Hey Amud Aleph. This is primarily an overview to see how the Gemara and the Tosfos work together, how the goal of Tosfos is to support and explain the Gemara. So we'll begin with the general outline of this class. In the Gemara, we basically explored why the Akir and Anoch and our Mishnah don't need an area that's 4x4 tefachim. We know that they're done from the hand of the other person or into the hand of the other person. The hand of the other person is not 4x4 tefachim, and this piece of Gemara has 15 Tosfos. So let's begin the class. Here we have the flowchart of the Gemara. So just to show basically what this flowchart consists of, it's a very large flowchart. There's a lot of information in it. We have over here the original question of the Gemara that our Mishnah doesn't have an area of 4x4 tefachim for the Akir and the Anocha. And then we have a series of answers from Rabba, Rav Yosef, Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Avo, and Rava. And then we refuted all of them until we finally accepted the answer of Rava. So we're going to go through all the Tosfos that are on this piece of Gemara and show how the Tosfos is there to support the Gemara or explain the Gemara and things of that nature. So the first Tosfos is on the question of the Gemara. The Gemara asked, why in our Mishnah are the Onim Balabayas Chayev if there's no area of 4x4 tefachim for the Akir and the Anocha? So the first Tosfos provides two possible explanations for why we need an area that's 4x4 tefachim for the Akira and the Anocha. There's two ways of explaining why we would need it. Tosfos presents both of them. So here Tosfos is supporting the Gemara. The Gemara asks a question. The question is based on the knowledge that we need an area of 4x4 tefachim for the Akira and the Anocha. Who said we need that? So Tosfos provides us the source for that. He says that there are two possible explanations. The next Tosfos is on a question in the Gemara. The Gemara presented the answer of Rabba, who said that our Mishnah follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who says it's not necessary to have an area of 4x4 tefachim for the Akir and the Anocha. And Rabba said that this is Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara asked, was it clear to Rabba that that's what Rabbi Akiva and the Chacham were arguing about? They were arguing about Kluto. The Rabbi Akiva holds of it and the Rabbanan don't. But we know that Rabba had a question what they're arguing about, whether they're arguing about Kluto or they're arguing whether Yalfin and Zerek Mimeshit. So the Gemara asked, was it clear to Rabba? We know that Rabba had a question. So here Tosfos questions where it was ever clear that it was obvious to Rabba what they were arguing about. The Gemara's question is based on a premise that it was clear to Rabba what they're arguing about. Because he said it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, so it seems like it's clear to him what Rabbi Akiva and the Chacham are arguing about. The problem is that Rabba actually had a question what they're arguing about. So in other words, the Gemara's question is built on the premise that by Rabba's saying it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, it was clear to him what they're arguing about. And Tosfos challenges that and asks, where do we see that it was clear to him? Just because he said it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva does not indicate that it was clear to him what they're arguing about. It only indicates that Rabbi Akiva certainly holds of Kluto. So Tosfos will support the question of the Gemara, and he'll support the premise that yes, it is clear from Rabbi telling us that it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. It is clear that he was clear about what they're arguing about, and that's a problem because we know he had a question. So Tosfos is supporting the Gemara in its premise that by Rabbi saying it's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, that indicates that it's clear to him what they're arguing about. The next Tosfos and the next couple of Tosfos are on the next piece of the Gemara, where the Gemara presented the two ways that Rabbi had of how to understand the machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim, whether they're arguing about Kluto and they're arguing within 10 tefachim, or they're arguing of whether Yalfin and Zerek Mimeshit and they're arguing above 10 tefachim. So the first Tosfos tries to prove from here that Moshe is chayiv even under 10 tefachim, but says we cannot. So from the fact that we said that they're arguing within 10 tefachim about Kluto and above 10 tefachim, they agree that we do not learn Zerek from Moshe. Tosfos explains over there in the Tosfos how we would think to prove that this shows that Moshe is chayiv even within 10 tefachim, and says we cannot. So here Tosfos is not supporting the Gemara. He's just observing the Gemara and questioning whether we can make some conclusions based on our Gemara and saying that we cannot. The next Tosfos once again is also on this piece of Gemara. Here Tosfos questions and answers how can Rabbi Akiva learn Zerek from Moshe. In the second way of understanding the argument, Rabbi Akiva holds we learn Zerek from Moshe, and the Chacham hold that we do not learn Zerek from Moshe. So the Gemara is saying and presenting the opinion of Rabba that we could learn that Rabbi Akiva holds Yalfin and Zerek from Moshe. We learn Zerek from Moshe. Tosfos supports how that's possible, because it would seem that that's not something which we could do, since when it comes to the Malacha of Itzah, in order to qualify as a Tulda, there are very certain and specific conditions. It doesn't seem that Zerek qualifies for any of those conditions. So Tosfos explains how we could say we learn Zerek from Moshe. So again, he's supporting something that we learned in the Gemara. The next Tosfos once again is also on that piece of Gemara, where we said in the second way of understanding the machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanon, they both hold of kluta. So Taisus explains and also proves to us that we don't always say kluta. So the Gemara presents the idea of kluta. Taisus explains to us that we should understand kluta better, that it's not something which we always say. There is an exception to kluta. Taisus also supports the possibility to say that all opinions hold of kluta. The Gemara said all opinions hold of kluta. Taisus supports how that's possible, although it seems to be a problem to say that all opinions hold of kluta. So here we have Taisus explain to us something we learned in the Gemara. We learned kluta, so we would think kluta applies across the board. He explains to us and proves to us it does not. And he supports another point in the Gemara that all opinions hold of kluta. He shows that although that seems to be a problem, it's not. The next Taisus is on the question we asked on the answer of Rabbah. And we asked that although we see from Rabbi Akiva that we don't need an area of 4x4 for the Hanacha, it doesn't indicate that we don't need an area of 4x4 for the Akira. So here Taisus does something very, very important. The Gemara is telling us to distinguish between the Hanacha and the Akira, which means that there's a reason to distinguish. So Taisus explains why we would say that Rabbi Akiva is only referring to the Hanacha and not the Akira. Where do we get it from? If Rabbi Akiva said we don't need an area of 4x4 for the Hanacha, it should seem to apply equally to the Akira. Taisus presents the logic to say that it would work for the Hanacha and not for the Akira, and therefore, from the fact that Rabbi Akiva said we don't need 4x4 for the Hanacha, does not indicate that we don't need an area of 4x4 for the Akira. So Taisus is supporting the Gemara. The Gemara is telling us that we could distinguish between the Hanacha and the Akira, and therefore reject the answer of Rabbah. Taisus is supporting this idea and explaining to us what it's based on. The next Taisus is on the answers of Rabbah and Rav Yosef. Rabbi and Rav Yosef gave two various answers that our Mishnah either follows only Rabbi Akiva or only follows Rebbe. Taisus explains why Rabbi and Rav Yosef couldn't answer this question based on their opinion elsewhere, that machshavte meshavte l'mokim. Why did Rabbi and Rav Yosef have to say that our Mishnah follows exclusively Rabbi Akiva or exclusively Rebbe? They could have just simply said it's everybody's opinion, because they hold machshavte meshavte l'mokim. When a person gives importance to an area, it becomes considered 4x4 tefachim, and they hold everybody agrees with this. Why they just say that in our Mishnah he gave the other person's hand importance? Taisus explains the machshavte meshavte l'mokim is not something that we say unless the person not only gave importance to the place, but that it's the only way he could do it. So here again, Taisus is in a way supporting the Gemara. The Gemara is saying that Rabbah said it's Rabbi Akiva, Rav Yosef said it's Rebbe. Taisus is supporting that's the only answer they could give. They could not have answered machshavte meshavte l'mokim. The next Taisus, we have a couple of Taisus on this, is when Rav Yosef said that our Mishnah has opinion of Rebbe, the Gemara asks which opinion of Rebbe. And let's go through the opinions of Rebbe and see that it doesn't fit with either of the possible sources that Rav Yosef was referring to. So the first Taisus on this is, he addresses the question that not only won't we accept these sources, won't we accept these answers, whether it's based on the first case of Rebbe, we don't like that answer, or the second case of Rebbe, we don't like that answer, but it seems that Rav Yosef cannot have been referring to these cases either. So what does the Gemara say? Which case of Rebbe is Rav Yosef referring to? Let's look at it and you'll see that we don't accept the answer. And then we present two cases which seems to be cases that Rav Yosef would never have been referring to. Taisus explains to us how they could be cases Rav Yosef was referring to. So Taisus now is supporting the Gemara. The Gemara was saying that was Rav Yosef referring to this? Was he referring to this? Taisus is showing us how he could be referring to either of those cases. The next Taisus is also on that part of the Gemara. And here Taisus answers why we chose a case where the tree and its branches were in a different rishus. We said that the first case of Rebbe that Rav Yosef was possibly referring to is not talking about a regular case. It's talking about when the tree was in one rishus and the branch was in another rishus. Taisus explains why we needed to establish it that the tree and the branch were in different rishus. Taisus also explains that Shadi Neife Basar Ikare influences which rishus the branch is considered to be in. So if the branch is in one rishus and the trunk is in another rishus, the branch is considered to be in the rishus of the tree. So here Taisus is explaining to us the Gemara that we presented, the teaching of Rebbe. He's explained to us why we chose that case, because if you're looking at the case, you would wonder why. He's explained to us how the case works. So he's giving us an understanding in something that we learned in the Gemara. The next Taisus is also on this piece of the Gemara. We presented the two different teachings of Rebbe. And Taisus explains how they know it's a Rishus HaYachid Mekeira and it's not because of Kluta. In the second case, we said that when Rebbe says that when one throws from Rishus HaRabim to another Rishus HaRabim through Rishus HaYachid, this that is Chayev to Chiyuvim, we said it's only when it's a Rishus HaYachid Mekeira. How do they? This is what Rav and Shmuel taught us. How do Rav and Shmuel know that it's Rishus HaYachid Mekeira? Rebbe didn't say that. They just said it's a Rishus HaYachid Mekeira. And he's Chayev not because of Kluta, he's Chayev because basic command Demal Yadamya. How do they know to interpret Rebbe in such a way? What's their source for it? So the Gemara says that they interpret it in that way. Taisus supports this and explains it to us where they're getting it from and what's it based on. Taisus also points out how a Gemara in Gittin doesn't agree with them. So that's a side point. He just mentions that their interpretation of Rebbe doesn't fit with the interpretation of the Gemara elsewhere in the way it understands Rebbe. So just pointing out to us how two Gemaras don't fit, that what we learn here in our Gemara, to be aware if we learn the other Gemara that they're not fitting with one another. The next Taisvus is on a later piece of Gemara. We jumped a bit over there, where we presented that Rabbi Yesi Rabbi Yehuda seems to not fit with the answer of Rabbi Abba, since Rabbi Yesi Rabbi Yehuda holds that a basket in Rishus HaYachid and Rishus HaRabim should be considered a Rishus HaYachid. So Taisus explains why there wouldn't be a chiyuv for Moshe. Taisus says that if the Balabayas carried it into the basket that the Ani is holding, according to Rabbi Yesi Rabbi Yehuda, he'd be pater, since he carried from one Rishus HaYachid to another Rishus HaYachid. Taisus explains how the Gemara could say those words, he would be pater. It would seem that although he's pater for carrying from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, since he placed it in the basket, which is a Rishus HaYachid, but there should be a chiyuv for carrying from one Rishus HaYachid to another Rishus HaYachid over the Rishus HaRabim. Taisus explains how there wouldn't be that chiyuv. So he's supporting a statement in the Gemara that he would be pater, and showing that he would be pater completely, and there would be no chiyuv of Moshe either. The next Taisvus is on what the Gemara responds that no, it could be that it fits with Rabbi Yesi Rabbi Yehuda, because our mission is referring to a case that it's within 10 Tvachim, and then Rabbi Yesi Rabbi Yehuda will not say that the basket is a Rishus HaYachid. So here there's two parts to the Taisvus. First, Taisvus explains why the basket won't be a Carmelis. Although it's not a Rishus HaYachid, it should be a Carmelis. So the Gemara is saying it's within 10 Tvachim. It'll be considered Rishus HaRabim. Taisvus is supporting that. Since we would have a question that it should be a Carmelis, Taisvus explains to us why it's not a Carmelis. The second part of Taisvus is a question which he leaves unanswered, and that is that we would know from the very start that it's within 10 Tvachim. Taisvus asked that it's obvious that it's below 10 Tvachim. So what was the discussion of it fitting with Rabbi Yesi Rabbi Yehuda? We started off as if it was above 10 Tvachim. That's why we had our whole discussion, and that we had to conclude that it's within 10 Tvachim. Taisvus says it's obvious that it's within 10 Tvachim. So Taisvus is questioning the Gemara. Why did it go through that process? Why did it need to explain that it's possible that it's within 10 Tvachim based on a question from Rabbi Yesi Rabbi Yehuda? Taisvus shows that it would seem that it's obvious that it's within 10 Tvachim. It's not even a question, and therefore we shouldn't have had the whole discussion regarding Rabbi Yesi Rabbi Yehuda, and he leaves that unanswered. So there Taisvus is trying to support the Gemara in the sense that he's saying, I don't understand how this works. He doesn't give an answer, however. The next Taisvus is on the answer of Rabbi Avo, that the person's hand is within 3 Tvachim of the ground, and therefore when it was placed in his hand or taken from his hand, it's as if it was placed on the ground or taken from the ground, which has an area of 4 by 4 Tvachim. So Taisvus here explains that Rabbi Avo only makes sense if he holds Eged Yad Shmei Eged. There's a concept that the hand that's within 3 Tvachim is resting on the ground. If it was fully resting, that would be a problem, unless we hold that the hand is bound to the body and therefore cannot rest in a different Rishus. Again, unless we hold that since it's in a different Rishus, it cannot be considered resting on the ground, although it's within 3 Tvachim because it's bound to the body because they're in different Rishuyas. Taisvus explains that Rabbi Avo must hold Eged Yad Shmei Eged for his answer to make sense. So he's supporting the Gemara. Rabbi Avo presents an answer, and Taisvus is showing us how it could make sense and letting us know that only under certain conditions could it make sense, and that way we understand the opinion of Rabbi Avo regarding Eged. The next Taisvus is regarding the 3 possible explanations, the middle one specifically. How is it possible for a person's hand to be within 3 Tvachim of the ground? One of the ways we said it is if the person was standing in a pit. So Taisvus explains that the pit must be a Rishus HaRabim. So he's supporting the Gemara. We're saying it's in a pit. He tells us it can only make sense if it's a Rishus HaRabim, otherwise it wouldn't make sense. And he also shows us how a pit could be a Rishus HaRabim. The next Taisvus is on the last and final thing in the Gemara, which is the Gemara explained why Rabbi Yechon needed to teach us not only that Yadi Shel Adam Chashuv Lekadal Al Dalit, that the hand of a person is significant to him, as if it's an area of 4 by 4 Tvachim. Rabbi Yechanan also needed to teach us a different din, that if somebody threw an item 4 Amos Rishus HaRabim and it landed in another's hand, he's chayiv. The one who threw it is chayiv. And we explained the reason we need to teach that is to tell us that not only when the person gave significance to the other person's hand by making it a place for the akira and a place for the anacha, is the hand considered 4 by 4 Tvachim. But even when he threw it and he didn't know where it's going to land, and it ended up landing in the other's hand, still we say it's still considered 4 by 4 Tvachim, although the person didn't give significance to the hand. Taisus over here explains, so he's going to support the Gemara. The Gemara said that we don't only need the first teaching of Rabbi Yechanan. We also need the second teaching of Rabbi Yechanan. Taisus will explain why we couldn't just teach the second teaching of Rabbi Yechanan, and we also needed to teach the first. So he's supporting the Gemara. The Gemara is teaching us one teaching of Rabbi Yechanan, a second one. The Gemara explains why the first is not enough. We also need the second. And Taisus explains why the second is not enough, and we most certainly need the first. And with that, we have the whole overview of the Gemara in the context of seeing how Taisus comes to support and explain the Gemara.